can't keep it alive. So I wanted to change that stereotype, the stereotype for shrimp, and get it to a point where anyone could keep shrimp. Like, it didn't matter where you got them from. Like, you know, if you got them from me, like, I'm gonna guarantee they're gonna live. So that was my whole vision with Flip Aquatics, and we've changed a lot since then. So like I said, our thing was USA bred shrimp and snails, and we wanted healthier shrimp, you know, less travel time. They were coming straight from us. They weren't coming from overseas. And then we've changed from that. We actually migrated to importing. And the reason why is because we tried it for 3 years. Like a solid, like 2.5, 3 years, and we could not keep stock. And so what was happening is people weren't buying from us because we didn't have shrimp. And it was just like, they were going back to these people that I was trying
Hey
to
y'all,
take
hard to
business
chat
away
because
from
Rob's
they were
talking,
turning
so I'm
people
not
off
going to talk.
online. And so I was like, okay, so maybe we can import and we can do it right. And then all of a sudden, maybe we can present these healthy shrimp to the market. They might not be USA bred, which USA bred is still better. I 100% support people like Chris Roma's here, and he does a lot of, shout out to Chris Roma, he does a lot of breeding. We got Chris Hardy, he does some breeding. And so I still completely support that, but I wanted to be able to provide healthy shrimp. That was my big thing. And so now we're able to do that. We are the only business, as far as I know, that does a 30-day quarantine when we import. And everyone called me crazy. Every business person I talked to, every person that is my friend said, no one quarantines. Because what happens in the first 30 days is everything dies that's gonna die. And so now all of a sudden you're taking the loss and the customer isn't. And for me, it was like, okay, so we're gonna have to charge a little bit more, but when the customer gets it, they're gonna be that much happier. And so that's kind of how we got to where we are now. And now I would be, like, I'm pretty sure we're one of the biggest shrimp suppliers in the United States, and it's all because of YouTube transparency and just a standard of raising the bar and really introducing some healthy things into the United States. So that's been our whole goal, and it's really been a fun journey. So where it all began, this is the picture that sums it up. And Randy, I don't know if you can see it, but what happened was I quit my job when I got out of school, the job that I had that was in my degree.
We're here at the chicken coop in West Seneca, New York.
Like, okay,
Rob's talking at the aquarium
and
club.
so my buddy had a 6-foot bed pickup truck. And I know this picture's small, but what is on it is 16 40-gallon breeders stacked 4 high on a pallet, saran wrap, and 1 bungee strap. So this was a journey. The nearest Petco was, I want to say 45 minutes away. And it was like a good 15 miles on the highway. And I'm literally like going 25 miles an hour. I'm like, I think it's tipping. So like we pulled over 5 times to check it. And luckily we got him back. But my whole thing was like, if I buy all these tanks, I'm gonna do this. And if not, then I got a tank full, or a garage full of tanks. And nobody wants that. So I just bought the tanks, I went forward, and it all worked out so far. All right, so my shrimp room, I talked about, I got 156 tanks, which I don't even know how many tanks. Like, once you get past a certain point, you just stop counting. And it's like, it's more of a hassle. It's like, oh, I still got like half of the tanks to like go check and feed. And so I'm sure some of you get that way. But we got 156 tanks. We have 2 rooms right now. We're doing a little bit with ponds. We're trying different tank sizes, trying without substrate. So we're testing a lot of different things. And it is crazy to think that we have 2 complete fish rooms completely for shrimp. So a lot of people can't get past that. So this is our fish room, and just some of our big sellers. And this has actually changed a little bit, but this was like, when we first started, this was the thing that like put us on the map. And it all started with the Royal Blue. Royal Blue is a Caridina. It's like a harder to keep shrimp, but it's absolutely beautiful. It has orange eyes, it's solid blue. And real quick, a cool story is my wife actually lived in Indiana. I didn't know her, and she saw that I had these Royal Blues, and she actually contacted me through Facebook, and she's like, hey, like, you know, I saw you have Royal Blues, like, really interested, like, can you give me some more information? And I look at it on my phone, and I'm like, wow, like, this girl's hot. Like, you guys know, you are in the fish keeping community. The majority of people in the community.
You watching, Amanda?
And, you know, historically, we are an older generation. There's not as many younger people. And so when I get this 22-year-old hottie texting me or messaging me on Facebook, I'm like, okay, like there's something out there that I'm missing. And so we start talking back and forth and everything's good. And this is on my business Facebook page, so she has no idea what I look like. And 2 days later, or 3 days later, she sends me a message on my personal page. And I'm like, oh, this girl's a creeper. Like, what is this? And so, needless to say, we end up talking for like 6 months. I go to a trade show, a pet store that is from her area, ends up having me come speak at their pet store. And I'm like, hey, like I'm gonna be in your area this date to this date. If you wanna meet up, like I'm completely fine with that. And she's like, yeah, let's meet up. And so we met up, we started dating, and literally, I think it was 9 or 10 months later, we got married. And so here we are. It's been like a little over a year. We got married in September, and everything's going great. So it's so cool that starting a shrimp business and selling shrimp actually got me a wife. So if there's any single people out there, there is hope. You know, you can start a shrimp business still. And so that's Royal Blues will always have like that special place in my heart, just because like if it wasn't for them, you know, I wouldn't be married. But maybe I don't know, maybe not. And the other one is crystal reds, which are historically like, I have species, but it's actually a genus of shrimp, or a genii, or however you say it the correct way. But they are Neocaridina and Caridina. Neocaridina is like your typical cherry shrimp. Caridina is like the harder to keep stuff. It's usually significantly more expensive. And so Neocaridina, they are much easier to keep. They can take a wide range of parameters. So they prefer harder water. So I don't know, what is the tap water like around here?
You can walk on it.
You can walk on it? So
sorry guys, I got a bad signal here. The stream's going to keep dropping. But if it drops on you, I'm just going to keep going. Like if it drops before Rob's done talking, I'm just going to keep resuming the stream because I don't have Wi-Fi here and I don't have a great signal. But if it drops, just bear with me. It'll come back.
Actually, I don't even have it on here, but we usually keep them at about 10 to 15 GH, so that's general hardness. So pretty hard water, and that's how they breed them over in Taiwan. And so, if you guys have hard water, you should be able to keep Neocaridina. And this is the thing that people always get surprised about, is shrimp require colder water. So the absolute perfect temperature is 72 degrees. So I would say it is the perfect basement pet. You just put it down in the basement, you don't have to have a heater, you just kind of let them go. And they're not too pricey. Anywhere between, you can get cherry shrimp at an auction for, 50 cents, 75 cents. Some of them, the newer stuff goes up to, $10, sometimes $15, just depending on what it is and how new it is. But mostly these are easier to keep shrimp. And I know I didn't say this at the beginning, but if you guys have any questions at any point, feel free to stop me because I tend to ramble pretty quickly. So feel free if you have a question. But you guys all know cherry shrimp. Cherry shrimp are at the auctions. You see them all the time. They're just a standard red shrimp. Now, what most people don't get is there's a thing called a fire red. It's also considered a painted fire red. Yes, Tom?
Do a picture of your wife?
That is a personal question. I really should put it in here. But trust me when I say it, she is a looker. But I will show you a picture afterwards. I will.
Instagram has pictures.
Instagram does have pictures, and she is my go-to photographer when it comes to shrimp photography.
She takes amazing pictures.
She does take some really good pictures. So if you guys check out our Instagram, I think it's Aquatics. She does all the pictures for it.
That's where I stole some of the pictures for our promotion.
I know, I saw that. It looked good. Randy did do a good job on the promotion. I appreciate that. But yeah, so I do have some pictures I will show you later. But what most people don't know is there's red cherry shrimp, there's Sakura, there's fire red, and there's painted fire red. They are all the same shrimp. Absolutely the same. They're just different grades of red. So it goes cherry shrimp. And they get a little bit nicer, they're Sakuras. They get a little bit nicer, they're fire reds. And then when they are gorgeous, they're considered a painted fire red. So most people just think they're completely different species. Like, people sell cherry shrimp and they're like, these came from painted fire reds, so these are nice. And realistically, they're absolutely all the same. And then you have Bloody Mary, which is again a Neocaridina. And now this one is also a red shrimp, but the difference is the tissue of the shrimp is the red part. It's not the shell, it's the actual tissue. So they're pretty much transparent or translucent. And that's the difference between Bloody Marys and cherry shrimp. A lot of people get that confused. But these guys are absolutely beautiful, and they tend to sell for a little bit more. And then you see like a neon yellow, which just stands for a yellow Neocaridina. And you actually see this one, it has some eggs on it, and so that's what it looks like when they're carrying the young ones, and we'll get to all that later. But these shrimp are actually a pain in the butt to breed. They really are. I personally have probably gone through, I want to say close to 3,000 yellows, and I have one colony left, and the colony consists of maybe 200 shrimp. And so I have not quite figured out the perfect way to breed yellow. So if any of you want to challenge, breeding yellow neos will turn out to be a really good revenue source to fund your fish room. And so neon yellows are tough, and for whatever reason, so if you do get a breeding, let me know, because I will buy them off you. And so that's them. There's also oranges, which we call the orange pumpkin. It's a fairly cheap shrimp, and it's just something that's different. So it really pops in the aquarium. And then you start getting into blues, which blues, as far as Neocaridinas go, are one of the most confusing things in the shrimp hobby right now. Just because blues, like, there's 1,000 different names, and every importer has a different name for it, so it's like fantasy blue. This is a blue dream. This is a black blue. Like, there's so many different names.
Just go to an auction and make a buck.
Oh, just go to an auction. These are sapphire blues. So there are so many out there, and realistically, there are two types of blues. There's your blue velvets, which are like a subspecies in the Neocaridina, and they tend to be a lot duller in color. They have green eggs. That's one way to tell. And I think they're pretty close to relatives of the snowball, if I'm not mistaken. But they're pretty much their own. And so a lot of people will get different blue shrimp, they'll mix them together. And that's where like the confusion comes in, because they're really not sure, and then people make up names for them, and then they mix them in with their colony, and then it's just a mess. And so this is called the typical blue dream shrimp. Now there are two types of blue dreams. There are ones that are bred from chocolate shrimp, and then there's ones that are bred from blue velvets mixed with carbon Rilis to get like a black blue Rili. And so there's so much confusion. And so most of the time, people will take blue dreams that came from chocolates, mix them in with their colony of blue dreams that came from blue velvets, and then they end up with some pretty ugly shrimp. And so this happens a lot. So what I always say is, when you buy blue shrimp, keep them in their own tank and just let them go. And if they don't do well, then get a completely different line of shrimp. You might be able to mix some in there and just see how it goes. But blue shrimp do get pretty confusing. And then we got the carbon Rili. And so this is this is actually a blue Rili, and it's one that, or people call it a bunch of different things, but I call it a blue Rili, or a blue carbon Rili. Is that my mom? Oh. That's my white palms, you see how I'm doing. But so this is a carbon Rili. It actually has a blue color to it, so these are a little bit more desirable. But these are ones that they take a carbon Rili and mix it with the blue velvet, and that's how they get these ones. And then we got, so I didn't explain this, and I should have. A Rili shrimp. Does anybody know what a Rili shrimp is? I know there's a few people in here that do. So a couple people know what a Rili shrimp is. Does anybody keep shrimp in here? No. That's a better question. Wow. Okay, so we got a couple. Bonnie told me she tried keeping shrimp, and they didn't do well. But we're gonna fix that. We're gonna fix it. Yes, you got a question?
Yeah, the only thing I ever bought was the ghost shrimp.
The ghost shrimp.
Oh.
And they usually require brackish water, so that's probably why they didn't do too well.
Oh, just for feeders.
Oh, well, we don't do that around here.
Plus, them red drink off the top. I see them at Texas. They're expensive.
Oh, they do get expensive. I think we sell the reds for $3. The best place to pick them up is the auction, local auctions. What's that?
You don't feed them your fish at all.
No, that's a sin.
No way. No.
We just keep them. So what happened? I'll do a really quick story, I promise. Is we started. I started in my parents' basement having fish tanks. My neighbor came over to me. He had an alligator, And he's like, okay, I've been feeding ghost shrimp to my alligator. And he's like, I would buy ghost shrimp off you if you had them. So I'm like, okay, like, you know, I'm going to school for accounting business. I'm like, yeah, I can make a little money here. So I tried breeding ghost shrimp. They need brackish waters. They didn't do well. So I'm like, okay, like.
By the way, that's how I started too.
And so I bought a 10-gallon tank. I put some cherry shrimp in it. And next thing I know, I look at the cherry shrimp tank more than I look at any one of my fish tanks. And I'm like, man, these things are kind of cool. And then I killed them all. It was a bad day. I actually used an undergravel filter with sand, and so there was no filtration. So I killed them pretty quickly, and then that's when it turned into like a challenge for me. I was going to keep these shrimp. I was going to breed them. I made some more mistakes, killed some more shrimp, and eventually I learned how to do it. And it all stemmed from the fact that I was going to buy them and use them for food, and I ended up watching the cherry shrimp more than I watched anything else in my entire fishing. And so from that point on, I was like, shrimp's my thing. That's what I'm going to do. And I stuck with it. And so a Rili shrimp. So what a Rili shrimp is it's a Rili pattern. And what it means is that the head of the shrimp is one color, the tail of the shrimp is the same color, and then the midsection is clear. So like this one has a red head. It has a little bit on the red tail. So this is a decent Rili shrimp. But if it had like a completely solid red tail and a clear midsection, that would be a really nice Rili shrimp. And they have all different colors. They have orange, black. You know, we talked about the carbon Rili, which is the black Rili. They have all different kinds. And so that's what a Rili shrimp is. I don't know if I have more pictures of them. Nope. So that's what a Rili shrimp is. And any questions before I move on? Okay. So Caridina shrimp. Caridina is a completely different genus of shrimp. So the cool thing about them is Caridina cannot breed with Neocaridina. So you can actually keep two different really cool shrimp in the same tank, and they will not interbreed. Did you have a question, Pete? Or were you just waving at me? Okay, all right. But so Caridina will not interbreed with Neocaridina, and so you can keep them together. And usually they're the more difficult to keep shrimp. You know, they're usually much more expensive. They actually, most of them prefer soft water. And so most of the time you actually have to have an RO unit, you have to remineralize the water, you have to have what we call a buffered substrate. It's a substrate, I know, oh man, Chris sells some Brightwell, if you guys have ever heard of Brightwell soil. Aqua soil, ADA, like all that stuff, contra soil, fluvial stratum. There's a lot of them out there. And what it is it's a soil that actually decreases the pH of the water. It brings it down to usually a pH of less than 7, so it's acidic. And so usually Caridina require the softer water, the pH lower. And so it usually requires a little bit more money to get them
We're here in West Seneca, New York, Buffalo, New York, at the chicken coop.
Variations. And usually, you know, most people that want a challenge go for these guys. And so realistically, they're getting hardier. So they are easier to keep, but the price range is anywhere between $3, you know, upwards of, you know, $100 is pretty good average, and then you get up to like some that are like thousands of dollars. You know, it's like the koi hobby. You know, those people get pretty crazy. Us shrimp
Chuck, you should be here, bro.
We're willing to pay $1,000 for something that we can barely see. So that's Caridina, and just some standard species. So there's tiger species, which consist of all the tiger shrimp. And these are usually the ones that people keep with cherry shrimp. So they usually require harder water. They don't really prefer buffered water. They don't need an acidic pH. They usually like a pH of like 7.2, something like that. And so there's just your standard tiger shrimp, which is straight from the wild. You know, people line breed it to get thicker stripes. And then you move on to like a black tiger, which has orange eyes, just an absolute beautiful shrimp. You know, something like this would go for, you know, $12, maybe a little bit more. So they start to get a little pricey. And then you got orange-eyed blue tigers, which these are really popular right now. And I want to say 2 years ago, you could get them for like dirt cheap. Like everyone had them, but the shrimp hobby has grown so much that these guys are almost impossible to find. And so I know like Eric Lucas used to have a huge take of this, and I don't think he's been able to sell them for, you know, a year or two. And so these are really pretty shrimp. And one of my favorite tiger shrimp is the royal blue, and this is how I met my wife. And actually how they created the royal blue is they mix black tigers with orange-eyed blue tigers and cross them back 1,000 times, and eventually got a shrimp that looks like this. And they're absolutely gorgeous. Still to this day, my favorite shrimp. Oops, I went backwards.
It has to be, right?
What's that?
It has to be, right?
It has to be my favorite. If it wasn't, my wife would probably frown upon it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
Unless it's the purple zebra.
Unless it's the purple zebra, which, or no, oh yeah, that's her favorite. Or the metallic purple. So there's all kinds of crazy shrimp.
Not deep enough for those.
Oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
we imported some metallic purples. They're really rare. They're purple shrimp. They're a Caridina, and they are $500 each. Yeah, so that is extremely pricey. Literally, for something that is an inch big or less. So it's absolutely crazy. But so you have the tiger shrimp. Next, you move on to crystal shrimp.
Oh, my arms are getting tired from holding this
The
phone up.
next step from cherry shrimp, you want to go, or like blue dreams or anything like that. You're like, I want to try these buffered water shrimp. They're needing a acidic pH. So crystal reds are like, they don't need it to be, like 6.8 pH is pretty good for them. So they don't need too much. And they have a lot of color. But with crystal shrimp, there becomes a lot of grading. So they're very particular. Like this shrimp right here, you can see it has a ton of white, and it has very little red. So because it has more white, it is a higher grade shrimp as far as color goes. And so they grade on color, but they also grade on pattern. And so this one, they grade on color intensity, that's what I meant. So like how solid is the shell, and then they grade on pattern. So like this one doesn't have very much red, so it's worth a lot more. And it's crazy. Now the fat is like more red, more red's good. So it always changes back and forth. But then you have, crystal red like this that has, a lot more red. It's kind of transparent. And so this one would go for, $5, maybe $6, whereas the other one would go for $15. So there's some big differences in there. And then they also have black. So crystal blacks, they're the same thing as crystal reds, just black instead of red. And then they have shrimp like this. This is an absolute gorgeous shrimp. What it is it has, it's a crystal black, but it has black and white legs, which is really important. The color of it is really intense. And so something like this might go for $20. And so the cool thing about crystals is it's almost like Christmas morning when you're breeding them. Like you really don't know what you're gonna get. And so when you get a really nice pattern, you're like, yeah, I did that. And so those are always a lot of fun. What was that? Did I miss something? Nope. I'm talking to myself. So the next thing is Taiwan Bees. Taiwan Bees are like,
we're getting to the good stuff, guys.
Which is an absolute beautiful shrimp. Donna, this is actually the shrimp I believe you asked about. This is it. Now this one has a little bit more blue than you were talking about, but these are blue bolts. Now the cool thing about Taiwan Bees is you can keep all Taiwan Bees together and they can interbreed, and it does not negatively affect their genetics at all. And so you can keep blue ones, you can keep green ones, you can keep red ones, black ones, and they can all interbreed, and they will still have babies that are red or black or blue or so on and so forth. And so you got like the blue bolt, and then you have what's called the black King Kong. There's also black pandas. It's just a black and white shrimp. It almost looks like the crystal black. But these ones have a lot more intensity of color. You can never see through their shell, and so they're a lot nicer. And then you have what we call a shadow panda, or a blue panda. And what it is the white pigmentation of the shell actually turns blue. And you get that by mixing in
shadow, no entry panda
with your lines. And then the blue starts to outcompete the white for
That's my favorite.
genetics. And so you get some absolutely beautiful shrimp like this. Oh, and the one thing I forgot to say is, let me go back if I can. Nope. The one thing I forgot to say is the original pair of black King Kongs, which is crazy, they sold for $10,000 US. Yeah, that's big money for two shrimp that were breeding. So they were going for big money, and over the course of probably the last 3 years, they've really decreased in price. And now I think some people sell them for $4. Like, it's just crazy. So they really overbred them, and what they actually did is they mixed them with other shrimp to make their genetics a lot better and stronger, so they had a higher survival rate. And eventually they were just breeding tons of them, and now they're pretty much extremely cheap to keep. And they're a lot harder. Oops, I forgot to go over the last one. Let me see if I can go back. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now getting into actually breeding shrimp. You guys saw what all the shrimp look like. There's a lot of variations out there. There's tons of color, but now like actually how do we breed them? So the first thing is how do you sex shrimp? So the easiest thing is the females always have better color. You know, just like in real life, women are always more attractive than us men, and it's the same thing in the shrimp world. So shrimp, the females are usually a lot bigger, they have a lot more color, and they have what we call a skirt. And a skirt is on their back tail, it's actually a nice round. It's almost like armor, and it protects the eggs when they have them on their back tail. And so that's when you know you have a female. Now, males, a lot smaller, really don't have a lot of color, and they're just really nothing good to look at. And so this happens all the time. Somebody will hear my talk, they'll be like, okay, I'm gonna try these cherry shrimp. Those are good bets, they're pretty cheap. They go out, they buy a bunch of cherry shrimp, they start breeding them, and they see really nice red ones. And they're like, oh, I'm gonna keep breeding those. And then they're like, okay, so you guys know what culling is? So some of us do. So culling is when you take an undesirable fish or shrimp out of your colony, so it brings up the genetics. So you're like breeding for a certain color. So you cull this cherry shrimp tank and get all these ugly shrimp out. 3 months go by, and they're like, hey, like, something's wrong, my shrimp aren't breeding. Like, I don't know what's going on. And here what they did is they literally took all the males out, and it's just a bunch of females. And so they took out all the ugly males, and they're stuck with a bunch of females that look good. And so that happens all the time. So don't do that. And if you can't tell by the skirt, there's other ways to tell, and we'll get into this. So this is your typical male shrimp. It's got like, if you guys can see this, the back of the tail is actually nice and straight, right? So there's no curvature to it. It's a nice color. It's not, it's okay. It's just okay. And then you move on to a female shrimp, and you're like, whoa, that shrimp looks good. That's a good looking shrimp. And you can actually see on the back tail, it's nice and round. It's got a nice little like oval to it. And so that is a female shrimp. Now, if you still can't tell, if you're like...
And Rob, hold on. Specify the bottom of the tail, too, because when I first got into shrimp, people would say exactly what you're saying with look at the tail and look at the roundedness, and I'd always look at the top of the tail.
So, okay, let me see if this will reach. So, right here.
Yeah, see?
Nice little oval. And so that's how you know, like, if it has any roundness at all, that's a female. So that's a good point, Chris. I never thought of that. But if you still can't tell, there's this thing we call a saddle. And so it's just like a saddle on a horse. Like it's a female shrimp, and it starts producing eggs, and they're moving down its tail. And so it gets this like greenish, and it can be a bunch of different colors, but this one's like a greenish. And so that starts forming on their back. If you have this, that means 100% that's a female. But if the shrimp's got really good color, maybe you can't see through the shell, and so you still don't know. And so the last way to tell is what is called buried. A buried shrimp is a female shrimp that is actually carrying eggs. And you can see on here, it's kind of a small picture, but it's a shrimp. She actually carries the eggs for about anywhere between 30 to 40, or probably 25 to 45 days on her tail, and just fans them. And then eventually they hatch out as full functional shrimp, just a lot smaller. And so that's the way you tell. And if you still can't tell, you can send me a picture, and I will tell you. All right, so the right setup. So you guys know how to sex them. You know what they look like. At this point, you're either like, okay, like they're cool, like maybe I'll try them. So what is the right setup? Like, what do you need to be completely successful with keeping shrimp? And so this is the most perfect setup ever. What it is this is roughly a 20-gallon tank. I always say, always keep something above 20 gallons if you're not an experienced hobbyist. Just because you guys know this, if you have a 20-gallon tank, if you have a 100-gallon tank.
Hey guys, shadow pandas are on the little rarer side to find right now, but I was able to find some over at Aquarium Creation. Rob might have some of those, so check his website.
Or breed fish. And so the bigger the tank, the better. And so I always recommend for a beginner, go with 20 gallons or more, and that's just safe. But this is a perfect tank setup. What it has 2 types of filtration. It's actually got an undergravel filter, it's got a sponge filter, and then they actually put a piece of glass that divides the tank. And why they do that is the front bare area they use for feeding. So they'll put food down in there, the shrimp can feed on it, and then they can just suck the stuff out. And then in a shrimp tank, you never touch the substrate, ever, ever, ever. You just leave it alone, you do your water changes, everything works out good, you do not siphon the substrate. And so this is a perfect way to never have to siphon substrate because the bottom is bare and you can just siphon out the crap. And it just works really well. So this is a really good setup. So 20 gallons or more. My favorite type of filters are either a sponge filter, which is a pretty economical way to go. They're fairly cheap. You can get them pretty much anywhere. And my absolute favorite filter of all time is what we call a matten filter, or Hamburg matten filter, HMF, whatever you want to call it. And you can get these at Swiss Tropicals. We sell them on our website. We actually make our own right at our warehouse. We have a supplier pretty close to us, and we order it in and then cut it ourselves. Or we don't always cut it ourselves, sometimes custom stuff. But yeah, so matten filters, the reason matten filters are our go-to filter. Does everyone know what a matten filter is? So mostly. If you don't know what it is, just really briefly, it is a huge sponge wall. And it takes up like a whole side of your fish tank. And it has like an airlift tube that you pump air into, and it just shoots water across the tank. It's very effective. It's just like a sponge filter. The only thing is a matten filter has so much surface area. And so the surface area becomes a natural feeding ground for shrimp. Same thing with the sponge filter, but with matten filter, they're really not that much more expensive than 2 sponge filters, but they have 3 or 4 times the surface area. And so I always say go with matten filters if you can. If you don't like the look of them, go with just sponge filters. If you like power filters, that's fine too. Just make sure you have something over the intake that is going to prevent shrimp from getting taken up into it. And so those are my 2 go-to filters. Next thing is substrate. So there's 2 substrates that I use the most. The first one is just for your standard Neocaridina, your cherry shrimp, and what I use is called pool filter sand. I have a spa dealer real near to my business and my house, and it's called Burnett Pools, which I don't know if you guys have Burnett Pools. But any place that sells pools or hot tubs is going to sell pool filter sand.
I go to Leslie Pools over on Transit Road up here.
Leslie Pools.
Leslie Pools, I think it's $13 for 50 pounds.
Yeah, so near us it's only $8.
And you don't rinse it at all. I pour it into a tank full of water, and it's crystal clear still.
So it is extremely clean, it's extremely cheap, and it's very effective. It doesn't leach anything in the water. And so if you guys are looking to get a nice sand base in your aquarium, that is what you use. Now, if you're going to try to do like crystal reds or crystal blacks or some type of the harder to keep shrimp, what I use mostly is fluval shrimp stratum. And the reason I use it is it is extremely cheap. And I started using it because it was cheap and I was a hobbyist. And then I started having unbelievable results with it. And so I just kept using it. I still use it this day. Half of my buffer tanks are that, and the other half are Brightwell. And so Brightwell is a really good substrate as well. And so those are the 2 that I really recommend. I think Fluval retails at like, for a big bag, maybe $28. So it's a little pricey, but not too crazy. Now, this is a touchy subject. So, do you keep heaters in a shrimp tank? My short answer is no. And the reason why is because I have had tanks through my shrimp keeping history, my hobby, that a heater malfunctions. It either cooks the tank or it freezes the tank. So something can always go wrong. So if you're not changing your heaters all the time, like things can go wrong unless you're buying like the nicest heater or have like 3 backups. But most heaters, how they work is they heat the water. Let's say if you want to keep it at 76 degrees, they'll heat it to 77 degrees. And then it'll drop down to 76, then it'll drop down to 75, and then it'll shoot back up to 77. And so there's always like this 2-degree fluctuation that's going up and down, and shrimp are somewhat susceptible to temperature change if it's drastic. And heaters, most of the time, drastically change the temperature of the tank as far as a couple of degrees go. And so I always say, do not use heaters unless you really, really have to. Shrimp survive anywhere between 50 to 80 degrees. I've shipped shrimp to Canada in the dead of winter. It took a week and a half to get there. Now, granted, it could have been sitting in a building that was heated. I don't know. But it took a week and a half to get to where it was going. It got delayed because of a holiday. And absolutely all the shrimp made it. You know, maybe like out of 150 shrimp, 3 or 4 died, and they were already extras. So the guy got more than he ordered, and he was like, "This is crazy." Like, you know, it's unbelievable. And so shrimp can tolerate changes in temperature as long as it's not drastic. And so our heaters can drastically change it. If it's just at room temperature, it's going to fluctuate a little bit back and forth, and it will not hurt the shrimp. So that's heaters. Now, you guys know the basics to a tank setup. Do you guys have any questions about what you need to actually set up a shrimp tank? Okay, so we're good on the shrimp tank setup. Now, there's 3 keys to success. 3 things that I believe every shrimp keeper should have in their fish tank or shrimp tank if they want to be exceptionally successful at breeding. The first thing is Java moss. At least I think. Yes, okay. So the first thing is Java moss. Now you can ask anybody that knows me, if has ever went to an auction with me, like the first thing that I buy is Java moss. Like literally I went to, I think it was either Akron's or Neo's auction not too long ago. Neo's. So I go to Neo's auction and I literally paid $10 for a little chunk of Java moss. And after I bought it, I was just like, oh my gosh. Like,
and I'm like, what the heck is he buying?
Yeah. I left and I was still kicking myself. So I always need Java moss. And the reason why is Java moss is the perfect thing for a shrimp tank. Now any moss will work. You know, you can use things like Sulawesi tank if you guys know what that is. Basically what it does is it provides a refuge for baby shrimp. Just like in a fish tank, it will provide refuge for the fry. It provides refuge for the baby shrimp. It provides refuge for female shrimp. If you guys don't know this, most inverts, especially shrimp, they molt. So they get rid of their outer shell, and then they're kind of vulnerable for like an hour, maybe 2 hours, and that's when they breed, and then their shell hardens up. And so to have moss in the tank, it gives them a place to go. Like go hide, get out of the way. And so moss is pretty much, I would say it's close to a necessity in a shrimp tank. Like we don't use it in our imported tanks, and we have shrimp that molt and die because of it. It's so hard with, you know, getting in and out of a tank, we can't keep it as much anymore. But we highly recommend it for the fact that it provides so many hiding places. You know, plants, they take heavy metals out of the water, they take nitrates, nitrates out of the water. So plants are just good to have. And then the other thing is microorganisms actually thrive and grow in Java moss or other places where there's surface area for them to grow. And so this becomes like a natural feeding ground for baby shrimp as well. So it just turns into a really good thing. So I always recommend Java moss in any shrimp tank. The next thing is leaf matter. Now you guys may have oak trees around here, you can use them. I personally use Indian almond leaves in every single one of my shrimp tanks. And the reason for it is, one, it breaks down the water, and you get like this brownish color. It's called tannins. And what tannins are, is they're just, you know, things leaching out of it that are, it's like antioxidants. It has all these good properties in it that are extremely beneficial to shrimp. And not everyone believes that, but I believe it. They actually did a study on Indian almond trees, and they found that the sap from them, or the extract from them, actually fights against cancer and can actually kill cancer. And so they did this study. Now, granted, it's, you know, I don't know how verified it is. I think it was done over in China. And so it's definitely a good thing to have in the tank. So I use Indian almond leaves because it works. Like I've used them for forever. It's always worked for me. And so I stick with them. But you can use other things. And so they break down the water, and microorganisms actually break the leaf down. And then the shrimp feed on those microorganisms, and then it just becomes, you know, again, a natural hiding place for the shrimp. When you have leaves in the tank, there's crooks and nannies that they can get into and hide. Now the only bad thing about them is the tannin. Some people just don't like the brown water. And so if you can get over that, you can use these. You can also use pretty much any hardwood leaf that you can find, like oak leaves, maple leaves you can use. Now I've never used these, so tread lightly, but everyone says they do work. Guava leaves, you know, a lot of people sell those, we sell them. And then you can use fruit leaves as a treat. So shrimp will actually eat fruit leaves like apple, you know, different things like that. Mulberry leaves they eat. So you can really get, you know, you can test a lot of different leaves and most will work. But there are websites out there that tell you which ones you shouldn't use. So I suggest looking those up before going out and picking them.
Just don't get them from where somebody sprays their lawns or fertilizes or sprays.
Yeah. So a lot of places like
they said are the best place for like oak
Oh yeah, like I know out by us they spray for mosquitoes, and so they'll actually drive through in an airplane and just spray everything. And so I personally don't get any leaves locally. Now you can remove pesticides. I think it's a mixture of regular water and white vinegar. You soak the leaf in that, or the fruit or whatever, or vegetable, and it will take the pesticides off, like 99.99%. Now look it up and find the right combination of vinegar and water, and that's one way that you can make sure anything is safe for your aquarium, at least food-wise. But yeah, like that's the whole point of this hobby, is like recreate nature. So you can go out and pick stuff and try it, and try different woods and things like that. But leaf matter is extremely important to the success of keeping shrimp. The next thing is driftwood. And the reason that I love driftwood is also it produces tannins. So it's leaching tannins in the water that really, make it brown, but they leach antioxidants. It's really good for the shrimp. The reason I use Malaysian driftwood, and the reason why is it sinks instantly. It just goes right in. I've really never had problems with it. Some woods they collect like near a beach, and so it could, be saturated in salt, different things like that. They can find it in the desert. There can be problems with it. I've had the most success with Malaysian driftwood, and so that's one I always recommend for anyone. But the main reason that I keep it is, one, it has nooks and crannies. It releases tannins. But the biggest thing is it is a huge surface area for growing algae and biofilms. So if you guys only have one tank, you'll know that you want to keep it clean. You want to scrub the tank. You want to wipe off all the algae off the glass and make it look nice, especially if it's like in a living room. But if you have a piece of driftwood in your tank, I highly doubt that you're going to pull that piece of driftwood out and scrub it off if it has algae. And it's usually dark, so the algae just blends in. So this becomes a natural feeding area for shrimp as well, and they can get in the nooks and crannies. It produces biofilm. Like, there's a lot of good things about it. And the different types of wood you get, like you can get grape wood, pretty much anything that produces sap. What it will do is when you put it in the aquarium, it will leach the sap out nice and slow. And some of you may have experienced this. It actually turns moldy almost, like a white moldiness. And that's the sap leaching out and then creating like biofilm and different bacteria on there. And that becomes an awesome food source for shrimp. So if you use anything like grapevine, spiderwood does it, so things like that. I know Chris sells some spiderwood, and all those things are really good to put in a shrimp tank just because it creates so much biofilm, which becomes an awesome food source for shrimp, and we'll get into that. But those are the three keys to success: Java moss, leaf matter, and driftwood. Those are three things that will really help you do well in the shrimp hobby. Okay, so now maintenance and caring for shrimp. Like doing water changes, different things like that. Like there's a lot of stuff to know for shrimp, and it's a lot different from the fish hobby. So the first thing is cycling a tank. There's a couple methods to doing it. We personally use live bacteria now because we get so many shrimp in and out that we have to cycle 30 tanks right now. And so we use a product, Fluval Cycle. I saw a couple people actually had it here, and that's a great product. There's also a Brightwell bacteria, like bioculture, I think it is, and that's really good. So we use those two. But the absolute best ways to cycle a tank is, number one is seeding a tank. So you actually have two filters on a tank that's already set up and already doing well. And so those filters are already ready to go. You literally can put them on a shrimp tank and it's ready to go that day, no waiting. The other way that we used to do it is we would actually go to the store. We would buy feeder goldfish because they produce a ton of ammonia. They're extremely dirty, and we would put those into a fish tank, and they would get it cycled with probably within 2 months. And that's the way that I like to do it, because then I just take the goldfish and put them in our pond, and it's no big deal at all. And so they're pretty tolerant to ammonia, so they tend to live through the cycling. And I'm sure everyone here knows what the typical nitrogen cycle is, so we won't go into that. But the small fish load, you literally just take the fish out and put the shrimp in. And I always recommend this: if you want to be successful with shrimp, the best thing to do is run a light on your tank, literally for 24 hours a day. Just let it go. Put some fertilizer in there, like get the algae like really, really going strong. Get it filtered. You can do the seeding method. Just take a filter from your other tank. Once there's like good algae in there, do 100% water change. Put a good filter on there and put your shrimp in, and they will thrive. So the more algae, the better. Which is just shrimp thrive on algae. So that's what we've been doing. We actually have a pond in our warehouse, and we put lava rock in there. and then we have lights on it 24/7, and it'll start getting algae on it, and then the water will actually turn green, so the green water. And then we shut the lights off until the green water is gone, and then we turn it back on and repeat the process. And over the course of like a month and a half, by the end of it, we had the nicest. Algae really can't be nice, but if it was nice, we had the nicest algae ever. And so then we just use those rocks as a natural food source. We can just take one out, put it in a shrimp tank to eat it, put it back in, change it out. And so that's something we're moving to, but we haven't fully got there yet. So the more algae, the better, and there's multiple ways that you can cycle a shrimp tank. Water changes. Water changes is one where most people mess up. So it is the biggest shrimp killer that we probably have. Now, when you get into this hobby, everyone says 25% water change every week. Just 25%, get it done. Some people say 50% water change, you'll really get it going. Shrimp are the complete opposite. Shrimp do not produce a lot of loads. They really don't. They're extremely small in bioloads. And so we actually have a hard time with shrimp because we put 20 in a tank, and then the live bacteria that's actually in the tank that was being fed by the goldfish or whatever, the bacteria dies off because they're not producing enough waste. And so then all the shrimp die, because it goes through a recycle. And so what we've ended up doing is we actually put snails in with every single one of our shrimp tanks, whether they're mystery snails, Malaysian trumpet snails, you can use apple snails, you can use neorite snails, just snails, because they're usually pretty dirty, they're shrimp safe, and they keep the cycle going. So that's what we really use. So with that being said, shrimp do not produce a lot of waste. So if you're not producing a lot of waste, you don't need crazy water changes. So literally 20% every month is more than enough. We usually recommend doing 10% every
Thank you, Reed
week.
Smith.
Maybe 10%.
Probably was covering the mic with my hand.
Without doing any water changes. And so shrimp do not need many water changes. But the best way to do a water change, and this is the way we used to do it, we would get a 5-gallon bucket on a 40-gallon tank. We would drain 4 or 5 gallons out of there. It's close to 10%. And then we would dump that out, and we would add the same amount of water in. So we would use a 5-gallon bucket. We'd fill that bucket back up. We'd set it on the lip of the tank, so right on the V. And then we would use an air line and just drip it back in. And we'd go to, I would go to bed, and next morning I'd wake up, my water change was done. It's nice and slow, because I have killed so many shrimp because I've done a water change too fast. And you know how you do, us fish keepers, we do this thing where we're siphoning the water out, we start putting it back in, and we put our hand down oh yeah, that's the right temperature, right? So it's oh yeah, that's close. Well here, shrimp don't like close, they like dead on. And so I've done the close method and killed a lot of shrimp. So I've learned the hard way. So the slower you can do a water change, the better off you're gonna be. And so we always say, drip it back in. What I say, 1 gallon an hour max. If you can, just do it slow. The biggest thing is do it slow and don't do too much. And that comes down to don't overfeed either. You do not want to overfeed. That is another huge shrimp killer. So, what's that? Did I miss anything? Yes?
One thing I've learned, after you feed, hold food after a half an hour out. If they're not going to eat it, they're just going to produce waste. That's what a lot of people have told me.
Yeah, so just pull it out after a half an hour?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you just tweak it so you're not sinking your hand.
Yeah, actually what we do is we feed a tiny, literally a tiny amount to where they just swarm it. And then we come back the end of the day and feed another tiny piece. So it's better to feed more often in smaller amounts if possible, kind of like fry. We've all raised fry at some point and they require 2-3 feedings a day. If you can do that with shrimp in very small amounts, they'll thrive. But if not, Chris is completely right. Feed, and whatever they don't eat in 30 minutes, pull out. And that's a good way to do it. Or have a ton of snails in your tank and they will eat the leftover food. And so that's another thing that works pretty well. But feeding, so like we were just talking about, new tanks need fed more often. New tanks don't have algae, they don't have biofilm. You need to feed them 1 or 3 times a day, really get them going, small amounts. Now once a tank is fully established, there's algae growing, there's biofilm, then you can kind of slow down, really there's times where we don't feed our shrimp for 3 or 4 days. We'll go to a convention and we have an employee, and if he's off, then they just sit there and they don't get fed. And it's fine, it's not a big deal at all. Shrimp can go a week without food. They're pretty hardy, And so just feed it in small amounts, you know, providing as many natural foods as you can, like having the driftwood in there that has biofilm on it, that has algae as a natural food, leaf matter is a natural food. Like there's a lot of things that you can have in a tank that are just natural foods. And so that's what we recommend. Now, what do you feed? So like blanched vegetables are really good. Really, you can, like if you guys are into YouTube, there's a guy, Mark Peggy, he feeds his shrimp everything. Like literally everything. His name is Mark Shrimp Tanks, and he'll feed them mushrooms. He'll feed them zucchini. He'll feed them apples. He'll feed them anything. And so blanched vegetables are really good for feeding shrimp. And the other things, like you can do you know the typical shrimp food. But here's the problem with buying shrimp specific fish food. It's expensive, and it always tends to be like this fad. Like, hey, this is the best shrimp food in the world. And you buy it, and then shrimp don't eat that much, so you have a ton left, so it lasts you a year. But 2 months later, they're like, no, you thought that was good, this is the best food. And then you're like, oh man, well, I gotta have that. And then 3 months go by, and then, no, this is really the best food. This comes from Japan. And so it's constantly going back and forth. There's 1,000 different foods you can feed. So what I recommend is pick a food, stick with it, and either your shrimp are gonna like it or they're not. And if they don't like it, they'll die. And eventually they'll either eat it or not eat it. And so just pick a food that works and stick with it. And as long as you're not having problems, don't switch. And so we recommend, you know, there's a couple on here that we recommend. But the best foods are just natural ones, just leaf matter, biofilm, algae. That is just the absolute best way to go. And so there is one food that I will always recommend for the rest of my life unless they change the process of how it's made. And it is a product called RREA. It's from Glass Garden. It's a German company. And it's just a powder. So basically
I feed this to my shrimp every day, a little bit.
So they literally put this food in the tank. We just sprinkle it on the top, and it literally like snows. So little particles fall on everywhere. And what that does is it provides shrimp with feeding exactly where they're at. So they can eat the food if they're in the moss, they can eat it wherever they're at. And it really helped us increase our baby shrimp survival rate because baby shrimp didn't have to compete with the adult food. Bless you, by the way. So RREA is one of the foods that I will always recommend to everyone forever and ever and ever until they don't have it, or if there's a better product that comes out. But so far, RREA has been one of the products that we have always stuck to. Now, shrimp tanks are different from fish tanks. Shrimp do not eat little things that grow in a fish tank. Like fish will eat detritus worms. They'll eat, you know, sometimes planaria. They'll eat these things called hydra. And so, in a normal shrimp tank or in a normal fish tank, you won't even notice these things. They don't even exist really. But in a shrimp tank, shrimp will not eat these things, and so they end up becoming these huge nuisance. So the first thing is hydra. And hydra is like this little it's like a jellyfish, right? It attaches itself to the glass and has these little tentacles that float out. And whenever something comes by, it'll sting it and pull back in. And so like baby shrimp, it will eat up. So you definitely don't want to have hydra in your tank. And you can see, if you guys can't see this, it actually is a long stem, and then it has a little like node coming off of it. And so that's a baby hydra. And that baby hydra will end up separating from the adult and float around the tank and find another spot. And so this stuff spreads decently quick. So you do not want this in a tank because it can kill babies. It can also sting adults. It can give them bacterial infections. Like there's just a lot of bad things about it. So you always have to be looking for that. The last thing is planaria. You do not want planaria in your tank. It's basically like a leech. It's this little worm that has a triangular head. It's actually got its stomach in the middle of its body. And these things will go through the aquarium and they will sting. I don't know exactly if they sting, but I know that they can bite shrimp and they can give bacteria infections. So these things are also you do not want in your tank. So these are two things you never want in your tank ever, ever, ever. And so if you do get them in your tank, how do you get rid of them? So we use a product called fenbendazole. It's the product that we use is a dog dewormer. It's called Panicure C. The product is actually fenbendazole. And so what it is you mix it into your water and it will absolutely kill any hydra, it will kill any planaria, and basically it will kill anything that has like open tissue. So like it can kill snails, things like that it will kill. So any type of worm or anything. And so we dose this, we do 1/10 of a gram per 10 gallons. They come in 1 gram packs, and so 1 gram will treat 100 gallons. But you really can't overdose it unless you really you overdose it. So you could do a 1 gram pack in a 20-gallon tank, and probably everything would be okay. I don't recommend it, but you probably could get away with it. And so this literally, we add to the tank by just like how we do RREA. We just sprinkle it on the top of the tank. It eventually falls to the bottom. It absorbs in the water, and it kills all the planaria and hydra. And so, yes, Chris.
I heard another person talking about flubenzenol, and that's basically, from what I understand, maybe the liquid form of this. Is that shrimp safe?
So it's the same product. So,
okay.
Flubenzenol, I know Corey uses it. Corey from Aquarium Co-op.
That's who I was referring to.
And he just started using it, so he isn't sure the exact measurement, like how much you use versus that, but he's thinking it's usually like 1 milliliter per 10 gallons. And I've personally never used it, but in theory it should work, and it's just a liquid version, so it's a little bit easier to dose. Yes, Tom?
You said you put cells in your tank.
Yep. So we underdose it. So if you underdose it, you won't kill stuff usually. If we have like a big outbreak, then we'll take all the snails out and then dose it. And then we'll keep the snails in a containment or a little specimen container or whatever, little tank, and then put them back in, after we do a water change. And so that's what we do. But it's usually pretty good. The only time we've really ever killed snails with it is rabbit snails. Rabbit snails are like these big black snails. They're different colors. They're pretty sensitive. And I killed my wife's favorite rabbit snail with it one time. And so I still hear about that. I still hear about leaving the furnace off and killing her favorite fish. So I get beat up pretty good. But this stuff, we dose it. What we do is we do about a bigger water change after we used it for 3 days. And the reason we do a big water change is not because the product is harmful, but because of what it kills, the planaria, the hydra. It usually creates a little bit of an ammonia spike. So we want to do a water change just to get that ammonia out. And so really it's not harmful. We've used it for a long time and really haven't had any big problems with it. So, lastly, we're getting there. When buying shrimp, some things to just look for. If you want to go out and buy shrimp, and let's say you don't know how to get in contact with me or anything like that, or you want to get from someone else, these are some things that you really need to look for when buying shrimp. The first thing is importers. So, I am an importer, but I always say look out for importers because the majority of importers, this is exactly what they do. And I'm sure you guys have seen this with fish. So an importer spends a lot of money. They get a huge shipment in. They're in the hole. Their first thing that they want to do is recoup their money. So usually before they even get an import in, they'll do pre-sales. You get a discount, but it's pre-sales. And that way they can make their money up front to get it in. And then as soon as it comes in, they get rid of it as fast as they can. So importers are notorious for burn and turn. Just get it out. It's not an animal. It's a product. It's there to make money. So you really need to be weary of importers. And a lot of importers don't even say they're importers. They just kind of blend in and kind of make it seem like these are my shrimp. I bred them. Or these are my fish that I had for a long time. And so you really need to be weary of importers and know exactly who you're getting stuff from. It's so important. And so here's a picture of a tank that has literally 1,000 shrimp in it. And a lot of importers, when they get them in, they'll keep, I think it's 200 shrimp per 10 gallons. So that is a ton. And so with that many shrimp in a tiny space, odds are that if they're gonna get sick and something bad's gonna happen. And so it's just not good. So typical, importers, you gotta be on your guard. And you really have to know. And so I actually learned this trick. This is a trick that I've used in the past. And so before I was an importer, I would go to an importer and I'd be like, hey, I want to buy your shrimp. I want to get your shrimp from you. And they're like, okay, great. What do you want? And I'm like, I want 100 of these. They're like, okay, here's how much it costs. And I'll be like, okay, well, when does your order come in? When are you going to get these in? And they're like, well, we get them in December 1st. I'm like, oh, great. I really want these. How soon after when can I get them? As soon as possible, I want them. And they're like, oh, we'll set them out December 2nd. We're getting them in December 1st, we're going to send them out December 2nd. We'll get them out to you right away. Right away, that's a person that does not care about the health of the shrimp. because shrimp, fish, they can't go from one box to the next box and not decrease in health. And so somebody that is an importer that cares will be like, okay, I'm gonna hold them for a week. Just make sure they're healthy, do a water change on them, settle them in, give them some food, and then we'll send them to you. So that's just a little trick that you can use just to see, how importers are handling the shrimp or how they're handling the fish, and then you can really judge your opinion based on that. Now the next thing to look out for is a shrimp parasite we call Vorticilla. There's also one called Scutellaria, and we'll talk about both of those. But Vorticilla is literally a parasite that goes onto the rostrum of the shrimp. It kind of looks like a white fuzz. It's actually like a little worm that is attached to their nose, and it kind of like squiggles around. And the parasite actually isn't harmful to the shrimp, but it can be so bad that they get in the way of the shrimp eating, and the shrimp will eventually starve to death. And so you do not want this parasite at all. And the one that looks just like it is called Scutellaria, which is the most common. And so it's, again, little worms attached to the head of the shrimp. And what ends up happening is most importers know how to kill this stuff. They're familiar with how to kill Scutellaria and Vorticilla, and we'll talk about that. But what you can't kill is eggs. And you guys know this with you ever try to kill snails in your tank, and then all of a sudden they had eggs, and you thought you got them all out, and all of a sudden there's 100. Like Scutellaria and Vorticilla are the same way. So they lay eggs in the gills of the shrimps. They actually have like little white dots in the gills. And so if you ever look at shrimp and you see like all these little white specks, odds are it's eggs for Vorticilla or Scutellaria. And so you do not want these in your tank at all. And so whenever we get shrimp in, that's why we quarantine for 30 days. We just want to make sure that we kill everything that is bad. But if you have a tank, I would recommend you to always quarantine shrimp. Just for the fact that little parasites like this can slip through, they can get in your tank, and they can cause you a complete nightmare. And so, how do you cure this? One, you could use fenbendazole that we talked about before. I'm 99% sure that it'll kill it. But again, it's a little bit harsher on the shrimp. If you're doing it multiple times, it can really put a dent in their health. And so, just a simple product, aquarium salt. You add this. You can either add it to your tank and just get the dose up, do water change, things like that, and eventually it will kill it off. Or you can do salt baths with them. So you do I forget the exact directions, because nowadays we have so many shrimp that we literally just dump it in. I'm like, yeah, that looks about right. Add water to it, it's good to go. But if you want to be precise, you use a tablespoon of aquarium salt for 5 cups of water. You put the shrimp in there, and then you let them be in there until they start shutting down. It's usually about a minute, maybe 2 minutes, and then you put them back into the tank, the quarantine tank. You can even use a 5-gallon bucket as a quarantine tank and keep them in there for a week. And you treat them when they first come in, you treat them before you put them in the tank. After a week, all those eggs will most likely hatch, and you'll be good to go. So that's how you treat that. The last thing to watch out for when buying shrimp is the terrible green parasite called Elobioxidae. It is an absolute terror for the shrimp hobby. It has really put a dent on a lot of the progress that we've made. And so what it is it is actually like this green internal parasite in the shrimp that tends to go to the tail. And what ends up happening is people that are not very experienced, they just get in the shrimp hobby, they look at this shrimp and they're like, oh, I got a buried female, like this is great. And so they get all excited, and so they think that this is awesome. But
you guys better be liking this. My arm is numb from holding this phone.
Cannot be treated, especially when it gets to a place like this where it's completely like coming out of them all over the place. And so this usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks to fester. And then so that's again why we keep them for 30 days. By the end of the 30 days, we're usually able to get out 99% of all parasites, all of the Elobioxidae, everything like that. But what ends up happening is this shrimp will eventually die. So this parasite will kill them, and the shrimp that are in the tank will eat this shrimp and eat the parasite. And then it can keep spreading. So it is not a good thing that you definitely do not want in your aquarium. And so it is called Elobioxidae. If you get in your aquarium, the best thing to do is to get the shrimp out. You can let it live its life in a quarantine tank. You can euthanize it. You can do whatever you want. But this shrimp will not survive in our experience. We usually, when we import, We import thousands of shrimp. We'll get in, 10,000 Neocaridinas at a time. We'll usually get out of every order, 500-600 shrimp that have Elabiopsidae, and then we do different experiments on them to try to cure it. And we've tried lots of different things so far, and to this day we have not found a cure for it yet. And so just get this out of your aquarium as fast as possible, and you'll be good. So. All right, so the last thing, one of the last things is called a bacterial infection. So there's a bacterial infection in shrimp. Basically, it's when a shrimp starts turning white, when it gets like cloudy. That is a bacterial infection. It is contagious. So if the shrimp eventually dies, again, other shrimp will eat it, and they will get bacterial infections. So you do not want bacterial infection in your aquarium. But there's something that looks just like it. It is called muscle necrosis. And muscle necrosis is when the muscles start breaking down and they have extra protein in them. It actually turns white. And so that's like this picture on the left. Your guys is right. And so that's muscle necrosis. That's a bacterial infection. The way we treat bacterial infections, there's plenty of products out there that you can use. We just do it the good old-fashioned way. We take the shrimp and we do a peroxide dip to it. So we just have, a peroxide. Sometimes we just add it right to the tank. Literally, I would say 1 milliliter per gallon of water is usually pretty good. But when I do it, I literally just so there's no method to the madness. But usually when you get a bacterial infection, it means a couple things. Oh, it'll cure them. It'll get them good. But it usually kills some of the beneficial bacteria too. So bacterial infection means that you have a problem in your tank. Something's off. Whether you have vorticilla or not vorticilla, whether you have hydra or planaria, like something is off in your aquarium that is causing you to get bacterial infection. So check your water parameters. Do a water change. Try to find the problem. Because fixing the problem or putting a Band-Aid on the problem, just healing the shrimp, will not fix the issue that caused it. So those are two things to watch out for. But that's what I got for you guys. Are there any questions, comments, anything you guys want to know that I may have missed? Anything like that? Mike.
Okay, I see all these different varieties and colors and everything else like this. Are these things from a natural state, or is this all just made up?
As far as I believe, most of shrimp originate from cherry shrimp. There's also a chocolate shrimp that a lot of shrimp originate from, but I don't know the exact origin of the chocolate shrimp. And then there's a couple species that are just like snowballs that are their own. And there's a couple species that colors came from, but I would say most of it, like Neocaridinas, relate back to like 4 subspecies. And then all the colors are kind of developed from there, whether they mix different subspecies, whatever they did. Like, you might go to Taiwan and over there they have ponds that have, 1 million shrimp in it. They catch it and they just like, oh, there's a yellow shrimp, like we'll keep that one. Like, you just don't know. Like, you don't know how they're developing them. But there are a couple species that they all derive from. So good question. And then, you had a question?
Yeah, like your 20-gallon tank, your startup, how many shrimp would you put in there?
Oh, that's a great question. So I usually do, I would say a safe number is 1 shrimp per gallon. So a 10-gallon.
Thank you guys for watching.
Now, you can stock a lot more than that, but that's pretty much a safe start. I would never start with less than 10 shrimp though. Just because with shrimp, eventually, like when you get them, they're kind of sensitive sometimes. Odds are you're gonna lose some. So with 10 shrimp, you're gonna have a good chance of getting males and females. They'll start breeding. But 1 to 2 shrimp per gallon seems to be a good number. And you had a question?
Yeah, tall or long?
So long is better. The bigger the footprint, the better, for sure. Like 20-gallon longs are my go-to tank all day. Yes?
What is the gestation of the eggs?
So the eggs usually, the shrimp reaches sexual maturity probably between 4 to 6 months. Then they breed when they molt. When they get eggs, it usually takes between, I would say the very earliest 20 days. Like that's just, if everything goes perfect. The most we've ever had to go up to is about 45 days. So it just depends on the species and the water parameters, things like that. But usually 20 to 45 days. Yes?
Parasite you talked about, that is fatal. If you end up with a shrimp, a bunch that you purchased in quarantine, and you know
Oh, the Elevioxidea? No. So like, for example, when we import, we usually, like I said, we usually get, we get a ton of it. Like Neocaridina they just have tons of it. And so with it, we just get them out as quick as possible. As long as you get them out as quick as possible, it usually is good. Because in the first 30 days that they take them out of the pond, because what happens is, like when we order them, we order them direct from the farm, they'll take them out of the pond, they'll take out all the ones that have it, right? So they don't send us ones that show signs of it. Within 30 days, all the ones that have it will show signs of it, and we get those out. So after 30 days, if none of them show sign, most of the time it will not show up. Now, it can, but it's unlikely. So as long as you're continuously taking out anyone that may have it, you should never have a problem. Like I know what we do is we guarantee that our shrimp won't have it. So like if you get shrimp from us and it's a month later and you got it, we'll refund you. We'll get you brand new shrimp out. You can take that one out. We'll send you brand new shrimp.
Thanks, V-Stag. You're the man.
And then we have not had any problems. So we've been doing this. We've been importing for about probably 6 or 7 months. We've had one incident. One time where one person had a shrimp, and they're like, hey, is my shrimp sick? And then we told them, get it out of there, we sent a brand new shrimp, and everything worked out good. And we've shipped thousands upon thousands and thousands of shrimp. And so no, so if you get it, take out the one that's infected, and it shouldn't spread to the rest of your tank. Yes?
Is that disease a fungus? What is it?
No, it's an internal parasite. So it's not a fungus. I forget the actual family it is, because there's a saltwater version of it. And but it is definitely not a fungus. Although it looks like a fungus. We call it the green parasite, green fungus. And but no, it's actually an actual internal parasite. And it just starts to expand out.
Then where's your wife Amanda tonight?
So my wife, she was gonna come, but I wanted to come on Monday so we could see fish rooms, and she worked on Monday, so we were gonna wait and come Tuesday morning. But my mother-in-law actually comes into town on Friday, and she works Friday, so she only had 2 days, or she had Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to get the house like in shape. So she's like, yeah, I don't think I can go. But she usually comes with me.
Watch out tomorrow morning.
75% of the time
Rob's supposed to be coming over to check out my room. Keep an eye out.
Anybody else? One more question.
What's the average lifespan of a shrimp?
that is a great question. So what is the average lifespan of a shrimp? In general, most people will say 2 years. We have kept shrimp for up to 4.5 years. Is probably our oldest shrimp. So if you treat them good, I would say if you keep them at 72 degrees, that's a pretty fair temperature. It doesn't have their metabolism going too crazy fast. They'll live a lot longer for you. So you can keep them up to 4.5 years, because that's as long as we've gone. But on average, 2 years is usually a pretty good guess. So that's why if you can, get baby shrimp, because then you will have them through the whole life. They'll breed a lot more, they'll acclimate a lot more. So baby shrimp are a good way to go, although most people want the big ones. We want the big ones. Great question. Anything else? All right, well, thank you guys so much.
Woo! All right, later, guys. Check out Rob, Flip Aquatics.
All the fish room tours will be on my YouTube channel, and it is Flip Aquatics. So if you YouTube Flip Aquatics, I'll come right up, and you can watch all the club fish room tours, everything like that. And then that'll be great.
All right.
V-Stag, thank you for moderating. Good job. Thanks everyone else for coming. Later.